Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Women Talk Tech, a safe space for women from all areas of tech to chat about their experiences in the tech world. Today I'm joined by Saskia, CPO at Token, an open banking payments platform on a mission to drive the shift away from traditional payment methods like cards and wallets to open banking enabled A2A payments. Saskia and I discuss all things gender balance at Token and why this is really important in her current role. We also discuss the topic of hiring, attracting diverse talent, open banking as an industry, and why it's an exciting space for women to be a part of, as well as the importance of flexibility when hiring and why this is key when attracting talent. I hope you enjoy this conversation. Thanks, Saskia, for joining me today. Really appreciate your time. Tell us a bit more about yourself.
Tell you who I am. Oh gosh, where do I even start? So look, my name is Saskia Donald. I'm the Chief People Officer at Token. We are a specialist in account-to-account payments within the open banking ecosystem, and I've been in HR for pretty much my entire career, but I have worked through different industries. Started off in retail. I used to work for a makeup company head office, which is just funny because I don't really wear makeup. And then moved into more kind of media type businesses. I did my first start. I think my third job was my first startup. I've done several startups since then. Was in mobile content for nearly 10 years, and that was where I really kind of learned to work internationally because I had companies all over the place. So I used to travel a lot. And now in fintech, which I'm really enjoying. Wasn't quite sure I was going to. I thought it might be a bit too. I thought it might be dull, and it's not. It's super exciting. Loving it.
Oh, I love that. I love that. And you touched briefly on it so far in terms of, working in retail. I mean, tell us how you got to where you are now. For those who haven't followed your
Yeah.
journey, tell us how you are. Saskia Donald, Chief People Officer at Token. Why are you here? How
Yeah,
did you get
okay.
here?
So, I did HR at university. I did HR development technology. So it was a combination degree of the people side of things and the technology side of things. I knew from the get-go that's was going to be a good combination. And really the kind of focus on in my degree was around automating HR and developing kind of learning and development programs. So that was something that I was kind of keen to go into originally. And I went to university in Southampton. I thought, oh, I'll do this, and then I'll go back and go back home to Scotland, and I'll join Marks and Spencer's graduate program. It used to be called
Oh no.
Personnel. It was one of the options in their graduate program. And that's really what I wanted to do. I wanted to go to Marks and Spencer's and do their Personnel graduate program. And that was the year that they stopped doing their graduate program
Oh
when I
no.
went to university. So that was that little bubble burst. So yeah, I finished my degree and came to London. Came My family had moved to London in the time that I was at university, so came back to London and just went and got I put on a nice skirt and went down to the city because we my mum lived in Hackney, so that was the closest place to go. So this was back in the day when recruitment agencies on the high street was still the done thing, and so put on a nice skirt, got on the bus, went down to the Fenchurch Street, which is where all the high street recruiters used to be. Just went door to door and with my piece of paper CV, and I got a job with Revlon, working for their retail sales director. So it was working with the team that were actually looking after all the makeup consultants up and down the country, who are an amazing group of men and a lot of women, but amazing group of people. The stuff that they did, they were so interesting. So I was like the head office contact for that group of people. So I wasn't in their personnel department, as it was still called then. I was in the retail sales department, and that really framed, I think, how I actually do HR. I think I'm quite commercial. And I'm always looking at, what's the impact of that, and that's because I started off working with people, but from a commercial perspective there. So yeah, started doing that, and then went to work for Polygram. So Polygram became part of Universal, so it was music film and TV. So London Records was part of Polygram, A&M Records was part of Polygram, and then there was some, and then they did our Train Spotting was one of our films. There was some really big films and some big music stuff at the time, but that was a very corporate. You think, wouldn't you, that music companies and film and TV companies, but it was very corporate. I didn't stay there for very long because I found it quite political working there, and it was all about, who you had to really suck up to people to kind of get anything done, and I didn't enjoy that. You didn't get credit for your own work, and you didn't get any. There was no merit in doing well. Um, so yeah, I didn't stay there very long. My job there was to support the HR director and the head of management development, and I was up on the director's floor, which was amazing. So I got to work not closely, but with John Kennedy, who was the chairman of Polygram Records. He was an incredible man. He was the lawyer for Band Aid. I think he was also the lawyer for the Lady Diana Memorial Trust. Yeah, amazing person. And he was the one. Um, I found him quite inspirational. He was quite a shy man. He wasn't very loud, and I was quite a shy man. But he said something once. We were talking about putting people through training and development and investing quite a lot of money in certain individuals. And I remember him saying, it doesn't matter if we think they're going to leave. We should still put them on this because they'll come out of this program and they'll come out of Polygram better than when they went in. And that's the best PR for us as an organization. They'll go speaking nothing but good things of us. If we don't put them on this, they'll leave anyway and be really like grumpy about us. If we put them on this program, they'll leave and talk nothing but good stuff about us, and that's good. And I remember finding that really like inspiring. Like, yeah, that's the way you should treat people. They're not a commodity. They're going to leave at some point. Treat them well while they're there, and that will do you well as a business in the long run. Yeah, so after that, I went and did a startup with some friends, corporate concierge and lifestyle management business. That was my first startup. Um, they still exist, although they've been up and down. They were listed on the London Stock Exchange a few years ago. And that's an amazing business, and I was very, very excited to join them. I mean, it was literally a cupboard under the stairs when it started, and when I joined, we were in a building with kind of rooms all over the place, so we weren't even in a proper office. It was proper startup fun. um, and I learned a lot there because because I was heading up I was their HR manager, and there was another job in between then where I'd worked in TV, and I had a wonderful woman was working for there, but she wasn't she'd kind of come to HR through the managing PAs and the kind of recruitment side of things. She wasn't an HR specialist, and so I'd learned HR. I'd had quite kind of scrappy roles and a kind of scrappy training. It was very hands on. And of course, I'd done the theory at university, but I wasn't doing anything in terms of kind of programs. It was very kind of hands on and very tactical work. So then when I went to 10 and I was their HR manager, I was having to plan programs and work on how on a strategy and roll stuff out. And I hadn't really done that before. I hadn't been trained to do that very well. So I was kind of making stuff up as I went along, and that was great because I learned to make mistakes, and not that doesn't need to stop you just because you've made a mistake. You don't stop and go, oh, that's it, I can't do it anymore. It's like, okay, made a mistake. um what do we do about that, and how do we move on from there? So baptism by fire, but also incredibly great learning experience. And then from there went on to, I think I said, mobile content. So that was where I started working internationally. So I started looking after 50 people in the UK, and then I think we bought a business in the Netherlands. So, after maybe a year or so, it was like, yeah, go and look after the Netherlands. They're close to the UK. It's like, yeah, but they speak Dutch and I don't speak Dutch. And yeah, they have completely different laws. I don't know anything about that, but yeah, sure. And then it was we're going to open an office in Miami. They speak English. You can do that. Okay. So it just kind of grew and grew from there. At one point, we bought a business that was almost the same size as us, but they had quite a different geographic spread. So I inherited countries like Finland, Nigeria, Australia, India, kind of overnight, and spent 3 years pretty much on the road, working out what we were going to do with all of those
Wow.
businesses. South Africa was a real favorite. India was a real favorite. Um, and that was great because I worked hand in hand with my regional MD and my regional CFO, and we would, work on the strategy of these businesses, whether we were keeping them, whether we were keeping them branded as they were then, whether we were integrating them with our centralized kind of global business, and moving, relocating people around from one office to another, to, if they had a particularly great product but just in one country, moving some of those people over to the head office or to the regional head office to then, grow that product internationally. It was really exciting times, very tiring, a lot of time on a plane. I went to Australia for 4 days once. That was not good on the old body clock. So really, really good fun. And again, just learned so much about working with different cultures, different work cultures. We talk about working with different cultures, and we understand what that means in terms of, the individuals and where they come from and the cultures that they bring, from that perspective. But work cultures are incredibly different in different countries and in different territories, and I learned so much from that job around that, which has stood me in good stead ever since. So yeah, I think that
Oh,
covers
I
most of
love
it.
that. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And of course, your role now,
Yeah.
Token, as a
Yes.
company. Tell us a bit more about it. What's your role at
Yeah.
Token? How is it going? Your
Yeah.
journey. Tell us a bit more
Yeah,
about
so
that.
I joined Token after a stint abroad. I was doing sports betting and gaming out in Gibraltar, another startup. I'm addicted to them. And I joined Token actually because they wanted to come out of their startup phase and into their scale up phase, which is, always an interesting time in a business. Token, as I said at the top, we focus on account to account payments. So open banking is really about, using regulation that originally came from European Union, and using regulation from that, where they've basically said to the banks, you need to be able to, work better for consumers and allow consumers to move their money from one country to another. It's all the euro. But the banking standards in different countries across Europe are very different. So the PSD2 legislation was really all about enabling, banks to work together more easily for the benefit of consumers. And there's been lots of other stuff that's come from that, and that's really what open banking is all about, moving towards kind of open finance across Europe. And we focus on account to account payments, so that's allowing you to send, money from one bank account to another. It sounds so simple, doesn't it? But when you're going across territories, it can be quite difficult. And when you make a payment now, from, let's say, your with your bank card, that's often, the payment itself is often powered by, let's say, Mastercard or Visa, one of those, or Amex, or anybody else that powers payments with debit cards or credit cards. And so you think it's your bank sending the money to the retailer's bank or the merchant's bank, and it's often not powered by somebody else. They can be powered by several people along that journey. When you return something and they say to a shop and they say that'll take 7 to 10 days for it to hit your account. I always thought, cheeky things. I've given them the product back, give me my money. Well, they've probably sent it. But depending on who they bank with, who
Yeah.
you bank with, and who's involved in the process, it can genuinely take that long for it to hit your bank. So it's all about, speeding that process up. So I joined, 18 months, nearly, oh no, it's nearly 2 years ago now, to work with, the management team, the exec team at Token, to kind of, as I said, get us out of this kind of startup phase and really to scale up. So we raised $40 million last year, Series C, and that was with the intention of scaling up. So we've outsourced historically we've outsourced quite a lot of our tech team, and being able to flex with that. We wanted to insource the core team. We had a core team, but we wanted to grow that. So we've used that raise to really grow and stabilize internally, kind of, our core teams, widen our core teams in tech for sure, in engineering, in product, also, areas like compliance and infosec. And really, I think pretty much every team across the business has had additional headcount, and that's allowed us to really step up in terms of our delivery, in terms of how we work with our customers. Our customers are usually big payments providers, banks, kind of tier one merchants, let's say. And so you want to be able to work across those. Those are really big businesses. You want to work across those businesses and not just have single points of contact. So that's allowed us to start to start widening our offering from that perspective as well. My job is everything to do with people and culture. So obviously we've been doing a lot of recruitment in the last 12 months. But it's also about enabling that team to grow well. It's not just about getting people on board and the right people on board. It's also about designing what the roles are going to look like with the hiring managers, making sure that we've got the right tools for everybody, so that once there's no point hiring somebody fabulous and then they come on board and they can't actually do what they need to do. So making sure that the
Yeah.
structure, the tools, everything is in place there, and then really working on our strategy for hiring those people and then keeping them with the business for as long as is right for everybody concerned. So we want to have we want to grow those people. We want that kind of core team that we have now to really be the people that are going to grow the next stage of the business. And for that, you need to enable them to do their jobs, and you also need to offer them growth and development in doing that as well. So that's kind of where we're at now. It's all around looking at that growth and development for individuals and teams, and making sure that we're organized properly from an organization structure and tools perspective. And culture is just hugely important for all of that. It's hugely important for attracting people in the first place, but it's number one really in terms of why people stay with a business. If they enjoy being there, if they're getting what's important for them out of your business, if they feel enabled to grow and to further their career, then they'll stay with you. If not, then they won't last long. For some businesses, they feel that that's okay, to have that. It's always good to have a certain level of turnover, but we're less than 100 people. So these people that we've hired over the last 12 months or so, we really want to stay with the business for the foreseeable future. So that's my job now. That's my focus.
Yeah, no, I really couldn't agree more. I think culture is something which a lot of companies really, I don't want to say underestimate, but I think it's one of those things which if you don't get it right, it's very, very hard to correct all the other things or correct all the mistakes that you've made. Or, I think there's a saying that we go by at Impala and we say culture eats strategy for
Yes,
breakfast.
yes, I've heard that
Um,
one.
and without the, yeah, I think without anything else, it's super, super hard to get everything kind of in
Culture
place.
underpins everything. So it's culture is the way that we do things. And it underpins everything. If your culture isn't the right one, or if you say your culture is something but then you do something different, then people that's where the lack of trust comes in. Because if you say you're doing something and then you're doing something different, then people can see the gap straight away, and they think, well, if there's a gap there, where else is there a gap? And so um you start creating mistrust without even realizing you're doing it. And as soon as that starts seeping in, people will start to leave your business. It's as simple as. So culture is the way that we do things, and at Token, we believe in being as transparent as possible, and we want to be called out if people see things that don't quite fit. It's really important that people vocalize that and say, "Hey, this happened. I'm just not sure how that fits. It doesn't seem like a very Token thing," and so we can either say, "Oh gosh, let's get that sorted," or actually this is why, and this is how it fits, and this is why it's important. Just always keep people involved in that conversation. Culture changes, culture grows. It's not a this is what we are and that's it, it's set in stone. It evolves, and it evolves because of the people that you bring in, and they are part of the culture, and their way of doing things, which is why it's so important that you're kind of and we are at Token very outward and transparent about, these are our values, this is who we aim to be, this is who we think we are, and this is what we want to keep doing, and that should underpin everything.
Yeah, yeah. I think a really, really hot topic right now for most people that I'm speaking with in my role, of course, I help companies find engineers, but a lot of it is about the gender split. How can we achieve that gender balance? How do we actually get that in the teams? So I know that we've spoken about it before, but I think what I'm super interested about is the gender split at Token, because I think it's such a huge thing to kind of shout about. But just in general, before we even get onto that, gender split, what does it mean for you? And I guess why is it important in your role as kind of chief people officer at Token? What does it actually mean to you?
Yeah, I think that it's quite easy to get hung up on the numbers. And I think a lot of companies set themselves a target, a goal. This is all good. I'm not saying that that's the wrong thing to do, but for me, I think there are more. I prefer to focus on different things. So at Token currently, our gender split is 70 male, 30 female. It's not great. It's nothing to write home about. But I felt that rather than focus on the split, I felt it was more important that we really looked at having women representation, and having women in particular represented across the business, because then you've actually got something to build on. If you're just focused on the number and it being 50-50, let's say, then you'll end up with whole teams of women and whole teams of men, and your number looks good, but actually you don't have a good representation across the business. And for me, that's as important as the number that you're aiming for. So we are in a very fortunate position that we have female representation in almost every team. Not every team. Sales, SRE, I'm coming for you next. But we have female representation in most teams across the business, and that means that when we talk about girls in tech, females in fintech, we can talk to people across the business, not just in finance, not just in HR, not just in marketing, not just in customer support, and not with a token lady engineer. Although
Love that.
Anna, you were that for a long time. We love you for it. It's really important. I have got ladies in engineering. I have got ladies in infosec. I have got ladies in compliance. I have got ladies in finance and marketing and the people team. And we have teams that have got 50-50 split, which is amazing. But for me, yeah, really the gender ratio, the gender split, it's more important, I think, in having representation across the business than just focusing on the number, because the number doesn't tell the real story, I
Yeah.
feel.
And the numbers will always change, right? There's no point having and shouting about these numbers and then, for example, the next month they completely drop. So I couldn't agree more. And I think a lot of companies, shout about gender balanced and kind of, being inclusive, but all the females are in one aspect of the company, and I think that's not a good representation of what gender split and gender balance should actually look like.
Well, I think it's important that you do what's right for your business. For
Yeah,
our
agreed.
business, we felt it was right to have people, to have females represented across the business. So that's what we've gone with. And now I feel like we have a base level, we have a baseline
Yeah,
on which to build. Listen, there is nothing more powerful for encouraging women to join your business than when they get the opportunity to speak to another female at interview.
yeah,
It
agreed.
doesn't matter. You can tell somebody, oh, our gender split is something amazing, great, but then they don't see a woman when they don't see another woman when they come through the interview process. It's
Yeah,
just then it's just a number. Whereas in our business, you are more likely to meet somebody female in the recruitment process because they are spread out across the business. And that's really powerful. And that's what encourages people to join. You know, the fact that they might have that's what encourages women to join. They might have a female boss. They meet other females during the interview process. They see females talking about our business within the industry press, at conferences. You know, they see themselves
Yeah.
represented within our business. It is
Yeah.
that simple.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree more. I think, going imagine like saying you have a, great agenda diversity and whatnot, and you go through the entire process and you don't see any females. How do you actually imagine yourself being at that company if you can't
Yeah,
see yourself there? So I
yeah,
couldn't agree more. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
And you
And yeah, that's the trick. It's literally, be the be be the company you want to see.
Yeah, yeah. And of course, what I love in terms of, what you mentioned about gender split, I love what you said. And how do you think you've achieved this? How do you think you've attracted these women in the first place? How do you think you've done this? And what were the tips that you would be to kind of give to people who are looking to achieve the same thing?
Yeah, I think for us, and I've mentioned it already, but I think transparency with us is really key. We are very open and honest about who we are because we're very open and honest about what we have still to achieve. And I think that is a big part of our culture. I think we it has been said that we are too open, we're too transparent sometimes, but we feel it's the way to be. So, and that's a big part of our culture. So, I think that really comes across, um, especially at interview stage. And I think also because we're very vocal about what we do, we're trying to build a business, but we're also trying to build an industry, right? Open banking is new. It's still at infancy, if you like, and so we have the opportunity to be disruptors within the space, and that's attractive. I think that financial services and technology companies both have had quite let's say have been seen as real kind of bro companies, right? But
Yeah.
bro industries,
I
for
love
want
that.
of a better phrase. I think open banking is attractive for women because it is such a disruptor. Um, and there are a lot of women in the space already, and they're visible. So it's all very well having lots of women in the space, but if they're not visible, I mean, the head of the open banking, the industry kind of body was female until
Yeah.
and so all it sets the tone from the get go, right? So as soon as you start looking, what is this open banking? You start seeing women. It's like, okay, it's a good place to be as a female. So I think the space is seen as disruptive. I think there have been women visible in it from the get go. I think the other thing is that it's really nice to join an industry where you are making a difference. Now, we're not
Couldn't agree
saving
more.
lives. We're not saving lives. We're not doing anything, remotely worthy in that sense. But open banking is all about democratizing and making the payment space fairer, faster, and safer for the consumer and cheaper for merchants. And it's nice to join a space and join an industry where you feel like you're doing something worthy, even if it's at a particularly a particular level. Um, and I think that attracts women. They want to know that they're making a difference in whichever part of the business they're working. So that really helps in terms of attracting people as well. Um, we also offer, we've always been remote first. Even before the pandemic, we were remote first. We have colleagues in Scotland, Devon, different parts of Germany, Canada. We have people all over the place, and that's hugely important for people that they and there's no, oh, you don't have to ask. It's part of who we are as a business. It's just the way that we do things and always have done. So offering that, being remote first. Yeah, I would say about 35% of our population are fully remote, another 50% hybrid, and then there's a couple of us old dinosaurs that like to come to the office most days. Um, and that just offers so much opportunity for people who may not have been able to work in a, London city centric or Berlin city centric business beforehand. And that opens up your talent pool in terms of who you can attract. So I have just as many men that want to do the school pickup and the school drop as I have women that want to do that, and so we're able to afford them that. Here at Token, you build your role and you build your work time around whatever it is that you need to do on a personal basis when you're working from home, and it's down to you to organize that. It's down to you as an employee at Token to deliver your work. So if you need to do some of that at 2 o'clock in the morning because that suits you, fine.
Yeah.
Rather, you weren't doing it at 2 o'clock in the morning if it's not good for your health. But if that's what suits you for whatever reason, then that's okay. There will be times when, we need to be together, we need to be on calls at the same time. But it's really important that you're able to do your work in a way that suits you. You get better productivity from people if they're able to do it when they need and want. And if you trust people to do the job and to do it well, then they usually will.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. I think flexibility now it was a hot topic even before the pandemic, but I think after the pandemic, people got a new lease or not a new lease of life, but their life perspective changed on how they should work. Work-life balance is a massive topic at the moment, and it should always be. But I think it's changed since the pandemic because I think a lot of people had a different mindset on what their work should look like, what it should be like, and what their future work will should look like as well.
So I'd challenge you to stop using the phrase work-life balance, because I think that drives a level of pressure to make everything work that isn't realistic. I prefer to use the phrase work-life harmony. It's about your work life and your home life, your personal life coexisting well. And that isn't the same for everybody. And it doesn't mean I work 8 hours and I'm at home 8 hours. That's balance, right? Where everything's equal. But that's just not realistic. Harmony is more important. Getting them to coexist well um, is something that I would challenge everybody to kind of focus on, because when you're more realistic about what's achievable, then you're more likely to achieve it, right?
Yeah,
um
yeah, I
and
agree.
and the work hours and it's not just about switching off at a certain time. They can totally overlap. I'm working from home today. I was at the kitchen table at 8 a.m. and logged in and doing stuff, but I had already put a load of washing on. It's the Easter holiday, so I didn't have to do the school run. So I'd already done a load of washing. It's already hanging on the line, and I'm hoping by the end of this, it'll be dry. I mean, it's a really ridiculous example to give, but you can do home stuff and work stuff at the same time. The two things can coexist, but it's about getting a level of harmony where it works for both.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. And I
so I
hate to say it, but I don't even think it's just a woman thing. I think it's a
no,
family thing, or
no,
even
no,
not even
no,
a
no.
family. I think it's a people thing. People want that balance. People want that harmony. They want that fit of their two
Absolutely.
worlds colliding.
Absolutely. And if you want to have the flexibility to work from home, then who better to work out how to make it work than you? There's no point in me having a prescribed, well, you'll need to be in the office 2 or 3 days a week. Nonsense. Then, my colleague Lynn in Scotland, she comes once a month. She can't come 2 or 3 days a week. My colleague Marcella in Devon can't come 2 or 3 days a week. Roland in Munich can't go to Berlin 2 or 3 days a week, or whatever the prescriptive things that companies do. Just keep it flexible and let the employees decide how it's going to work for the best. Because if you trust them enough to employ them, then surely you can trust them that they will do the right thing by themselves and the business. And we're a small team. If they weren't doing that, it would really stand out. So
Yeah.
it's not something that I worry about.
Yeah, yeah, amazing. And what would you say? I think I spoke of that before. What would you say if there's a company out there looking to achieve the same split or the same balance or whatever,
Yeah.
however you word it? What would you say? I mean, if you could give 3 tips, what would you say for a company looking to maybe increase their female headcount or to
Yeah,
increase, spread the females across the company?
yeah,
What would you say has really helped the token? And if you could give any advice to anyone in your position, what would
yeah.
that be?
I think my advice would be number one, talk to your team. There's no point in dreaming up something without having, discussed it. And some of the best ideas are going to come from, somebody sitting in a corner, nothing to do with, the people strategy side of things, who'll have some amazing idea and also because they understand your business. So talk to your team and say, we want to get more females in the business. Where do we think um, that females are going to be most attracted to, um, and where do we think we have more of an issue, and what should we be doing about it, and just talk to staff. Why do you think we don't get enough females applying? Ask the men. Don't just ask the women. Ask the men. They've,
Yeah.
they
Yeah,
know just as well. It could be because you're strict about the number of days or the amount of time people have to spend in the office. It could be because you don't have good family friendly policies. Again, the family stuff isn't all focused on women,
agreed.
um, but it is a good indicator on whether you're female friendly, actually. So whilst family focused policies are shouldn't be aimed at women, they should be aimed at everybody equally. They are a good indicator of whether you take female issues seriously. So, um, what are you doing now that's stopping females being attracted to you? So whether that's flexible working, be that being cognizant of female issues and how they affect how they're affected in the workplace. Also by being um, interesting for women. Women are interested in
Yeah,
tech.
I love that. Yeah, like yeah.
Women are interested in tech, but there's a way of putting it across. There's a way of doing it that is more interesting to women. So what does that look like for your business? I just think, talk to your staff, really think about what it is you're trying to achieve as a business from a cultural perspective, and whether that would be interesting for women. And if your staff haven't got enough ideas for you, go out and find groups of people to talk to. Who's doing speak to recruiters like yourself, Sade. Ask for honest feedback. This is our employee offering. This is our employee brand. This is what we offer. What are we missing? And Sade, go and find me other companies in our space that are doing something better, and come back and tell me what it is. Use networks. I mean, come on, if you're not if you're in a tech if you're in the tech space and you are not already plugged into, any of the girls in tech kind of groups and movements, then what are you even doing?
Yeah.
Um and that doesn't need to be a people team thing, right? I mean, the CEOs, the CTOs should be plugged in there as well. Also, get your message across about, so again, with all these kind of networking groups, go and ask to speak to them and do talks, host, host meetups, tech meetups that are female focused. Invite them in so that they can see what you're all about and ask them what it is they're looking for. It's gonna. I just think that we've lost a lot of companies have lost their way of just going and saying, we're not doing this well enough. We
Yeah.
want to get better. What do you think we should be doing? Just go and ask, go and talk to people. But be really clear about what it is you're trying to achieve as a business. If it is a certain number, then think about how you can achieve that number and focus on that. If it is the spread of people across the organization and representation, then think about what your offering is. Um, and think about how you make it more female friendly or female focused. But yeah, talk to people, find out what you're doing wrong. You need to do that first. Otherwise, if you just go at it and haven't fixed what's stopping people being attracted to you in the first place, you're not going to succeed.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. There's no point setting out a plan and not actually doing any research behind it, right? You have to actually figure out what is the problem, how can I go about it, and kind of what are the next steps. So yeah, couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more. Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Saskia. I really appreciate your time, your efforts, and I'm so sure that everyone's going to love this episode because I think it's so key to actually see, how have you achieved it and how can we do the same. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Sade, and well done for doing this. I think this is a great I think this is a great topic to discuss with people, and I just think it's really good for women to give back. I think younger women wanting to move into industries like ours and wanting to be in tech. How do they learn the best way forward? Well, it's to learn from people that have gone there before. So, thank you for sharing this with everyone.